Welcome. It's our last panel of London Fashion Week, so a sad day, but a good day because we're talking about a great show. It's the Meadham Kirchhoff collection, and I have a very riotous panel with me, a nice diverse panel, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Dean.
I'm Dean Kissick. I'm Senior Digital Editor of ID.
I'm Becky Smith. I'm Creative Director and Editor of Twin Magazine.
I'm Harriet Verney and I'm a writer.
I'm Maarten. I'm a designer.
Okay, so as this is our last London Fashion Week panel, I'd like to talk a little bit before we start talking about Meadham, about this Fashion Week as a whole. What's been the standout shows? What have you guys loved? Dean, you've just come from Fashion East, haven't you? How was that?
Ryan Lowe at Fashion East was absolutely incredible. That was my favourite thing. And there's a sort of kind of candy cane, forest, animal, yiffing, party type thing. Very joyous, all about kind of love and him like walking around hallucinating wedding bells, and yeah, it was all these girls dressed up as like foxes and rabbits or something, with like tails, ears, kind of weird Japanese anime prints and frocks and things styled by Robbie Spencer and Dazed. It was very, very good. They had kind of like some panda makeup. Some of them had all this brown around their mouth, which looked kind of like, it was kind of supposed to be like cute and mousy, but it was a bit like kind of poo-like.
I was going to say, I was waiting for that.
It did look a bit like sort of 120 Days of Sodom, or that Alan Partridge thing when he's eating all this like chocolate mousse in bed in the Travelodge, that sort of thing. It was an amazing show, absolutely amazing.
Something else.
But all of Fashion East was brilliant, I thought.
Did you guys make it to Fashion East? Were you equally as moved as Dean was?
I didn't make it, but that's a really good description. I wish I'd gone.
Yeah, I felt like I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really sold it to us.
Mm-hmm.
What else have been your highlights? What have you liked, Harriet?
Do you know what? I just thought the music this year was so much better than it was last year. I know that's like not what it's about, but honestly, when you walk into a big room and the music's like really dull, and then the models come out and they're sort of like limping across the catwalk, it just sort of brings you down a bit. But this year, like people like Arthur Baker DJing Felder and stuff like that, it was great, and it sort of distracts you from the clothes. If the clothes aren't great, you've got great music, so that's always good. Yeah.
That's a good point to make about the music, because that leads me to a question about the fashion show as a piece of theatre, which ties very nicely to that lovely scenic description you just gave us, and also to a comment about the music, because that's what we know Meadham for in many ways, is creating these incredibly theatrical sort of they're known for their shows. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, Edward once said to me in an interview that he thinks of it as like a concert and the ticket is the album cover. What do you guys think about their shows? Maarten, do you love the fashion show as a piece of theatre?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that I really missed as well. I just remember being like 16 and trying to sneak into McQueen shows, and
we talked about this before.
And it's the same, and Margiela shows as well. They used to be so incredible and the best venues, and I think Meadham Kirchhoff are, I don't know, like one of the few designers that still try to accomplish that. Yeah. And I don't really like the word theatre very much, but I just feel it's such an integral part to being a fashion designer and being a visionary fashion designer. That it comes with a complete package. And I mean, that's what I love about Meadham Kirchhoff, that for me, I see my heroes in their work as well, and I see their inspiration, and I mean, I hope the venue is good, because I already see which venue it is, and I find it worrying. But because I think for them it's very essential that you don't have fake green grass on the floor like what we see now in the Topshop location.
Yeah.
Which I always find a bit disappointing. But obviously it's not their fault, and I hope we can hear the music as well, because I think that's essential.
They create a world, don't they? It's
very
much
absolutely.
All senses. Do you guys have any standout shows? You guys were chatting about some of the shows before we went live, some of the Meadham ones that you've loved.
Courtney Love, but it seems to be I mean, we were just talking about it before, I think she was partly the inspiration quite recently, but also four or so seasons ago as well with the Riot Girls, so they quite like sort of strong women, and Courtney's popped up a few times I think, so I'm sort of looking for any nods towards that again, I suppose. It's just a total, with them I guess it's just a total mash-up. I think they're so sort of London, which is so multicultural anyway, they're quite similar to that. They take so many different things and just really kind of mould them together, whether it be, you know, Disney characters or Courtney Love or the Riot Girls or the 1920s and Mary Poppins, and just kind of managed to meld them all together so beautifully. So yeah, I guess there's going to be so many things in here that we're all going to be pulling out, so it's exciting.
What were you going to say, Dean?
The catwalk is strewn with roses. That looks good.
Yeah, it looks pretty romantic.
Dead roses, very romantic. The first Meadham Kirchhoff show I think I went to was like the Courtney Love. I always like the recent one, and kind of Riot Girls, Tumblr stickers, and all these balloon arches set up on the kind of old Eurostar terminal. And that was very theatrical because it was the one with like 3 acts, and there were these child ballerinas and then models and then a kind of cake. There was so much going on. But that, I'd just joined ID, and that was the first time I'd properly done Fashion Week and gone to all the shows. And that blew my mind. I think first Meadham Kirchhoff show and first Christopher Kane show were like just completely opened my eyes, changed my world.
I'm going to sound really old now, but we just touched on it before about McQueen, because when I was in Paris seeing McQueen, after I'd been to that, it's kind of hard because still nothing really can compare to those. You know, I still see great things, and I keep using the word theatre, but you know, people still try and do that. But he was really amazing at it, and you know, once you've been there and seeing that, sometimes it's quite hard to compare everything to that. You know?
We've talked a little bit, because we mentioned that Courtney Love collection, and one thing I want to touch on is the kind of view of femininity that they put across, because they call themselves feminists. Do you see that in their work?
I do, definitely. I think they can get slagged off for it, but I think they genuinely believe that. They'd never say that they have a type of woman, you know, although Courtney Love always keeps constantly cropping up, but there seems to be so many different things, whether it be Mary Poppins and things like that. I do genuinely believe that they really care, and you know, that they've got the woman, the integrity of the woman at the core of everything that they do. And I also like to see the sort of tally between that and the menswear that they do as well. I think it's quite cool to have the both and see how the two sit together, which not every designer does. So
it's still quite a lot of sex appeal, you know, which is a bit of the antithesis of feminism, isn't it? You know, you looked at all their frilly collections, and they've got the latex and rubber and stuff like that.
That's what Courtney Love did so well, though, as well, because she is kind of quite a sort of strong woman, but that can be a feminist. And yeah, she showed her knickers on the Word TV back in the day and stuff like that. But that's what was kind of cool about it. It was like live TV back then on Channel 4, the Word, and you know, she'd be playing with their music band, and they'd be all so off the tits, rolling around on the floor and just showing their knickers and everything. It was just mental times where it was kind of quite cool as well, that they didn't care, that they were sort of trying to push the boundaries.
They're quite in touch with, when I interviewed them, which was actually a long time ago, so this might be irrelevant now, but I think Edward Meadham was saying how he'd been emailing Tavi, and they had like all these kind of shared interests, and there is that weird, not weird, but there's sort of American movement of people like Tavi, quite young Tumblr girls, reviving this whole Riot Girl thing in that whole 90s. And, you know, so that's kind of, it's like retro, but it's this very young movement, and it's very like internet-y, Tumblr. They're not really internet people at all, as far as I can gather, but their collections do actually look quite like that kind of bloggy mishmash.
Because they're not on Twitter, they're not, as you say, they're not particularly sort of digital designers in the way that they operate, but then they do seem to be very much designers of the digital age. And it got me thinking about the ways in which things like Tumblr and Instagram have changed how we approach fashion. Actually, this is probably a really good question for you, Maarten. Did you find that, you know, when you're designing, when you're sort of putting your stuff out there, did you think about that a lot more? How is this going to look digitally? How are people going to pick up on this? Because sometimes I feel like people do show pieces more than ever now, because they know that that's going to be what the kid. That's making me sound so old. What the kids pick up on. Oh my god, that was awful.
I would say that as well.
I don't know, that sounds like such a strategic way of designing, and I would be thoroughly overestimating myself if I was planning everything out. Like, I don't know, for me personally, it's never been like that, no. I do think Tumblr is incredibly interesting because it's so democratic. Therefore, that's also the danger of it, because all of a sudden everything becomes flat and has the same value. But I don't know, what I did with Topshop now, it was, I wanted everything also to be very DIY, you know, so that it looked like girls could basically do it themselves if they had some Tipp-Ex or whatever. And I think that's very interesting about Tumblr, is that it gives this kind of creative new input, you know, that also people from wherever you are, they all have a say. And I quite like that. I find that incredibly interesting, yeah. And it's also interesting to like get involved and then at some point completely distance yourself from it as well, because I quite like the fact that Meadham Kirchhoff is disconnected from it at all. You know, there's a certain, I don't know, certain distance which they have. And for instance, people like Victor and Rolf also had that in the beginning of their career. You know, they made such a big name for themselves, but they were never present online. They didn't have a proper website up until, what, 5 years ago?
Christopher Kane today.
Christopher Kane, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are several ways of dealing with it, and I think they're all quite interesting.
But duos in general just work well, don't they? Because they have it easy. Because I think it's really good to have two people to bash different ideas off together. Personally, I'd be scared of being somebody by myself in my own little world going crazy. I think it's really good when the sort of two come together, like Victor and Rolf and these guys, you know.
I want to go back to talking about some of the Tumblr points that you just raised there, because obviously Show Studio, we're very pro-digital, but I often wonder about the effect things like Instagram and Tumblr have had on fashion, and whether they've been, because very simplistically you could say things like Instagram have fueled the street style thing, they've made fashion a lot less intelligent, they've made it a lot more showy, but then on the other hand you could say that they've been brilliant for inspiration. I don't know, what do you think Tumblr's been good for fashion, Dean?
Yeah, Tumblr is amazing for fashion, but Tumblr is very different to Instagram or something, because it's not really like a street style thing. It's kind of run mostly by like obsessive teenagers, that sort of thing. It's really cool stuff. Show Studio puts some very nice stuff on Tumblr.
Check out our Tumblr.
And stuff, and you can just like reblog it, and you know. But I think what's really interesting with Tumblr is just very young kind of kids in their bedroom, just engaging with like the weirdest culture, making the weirdest stuff. There's just kind of interesting Tumblr girls, Tumblr boys around the world. There's more stuff going on there, I think, than on the streets.
Is it our generation's version of the Club Kids? Is that what it is?
More culty, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's very different to like Instagramming people's street style, because probably the most interesting fashion, or like, yeah, not necessarily the most interesting fashion, but the most crazy extreme stuff is just kids who aren't even going out on the streets. And
which is a big change, which is super interesting.
Yeah, it's a big change.
Teenagers in their bedroom, you know, having crazy sense of style, but you know, obviously not going out.
It's funny, we did because we're thinking a lot about punk here, obviously, because of the Met exhibition that Nick was working on, but also just been quite interesting food for thought. And we did a big panel discussion with Stephen Jones and Judy Blame, and we were talking about punk. We didn't actually stream it, but footage will be available soon. But we were talking about sort of punk today, and I think it was Judy, or maybe it was Simon Foxton, that said maybe that's going to be the next sort of punkish movement. It's mystery rather than putting yourself out there. It's kids that, as you say, are doing stuff in their bedrooms rather than walking around in the street. So I guess that's maybe what Tumblr, it gives them a voice.
I think probably when punks first went out onto the streets, like it looked really weird, really other. It doesn't look that weird now if you see those kids on the street, but if you see like some teenage Ukrainian girls from Odessa who've transformed themselves into living Barbie dolls and put themselves on YouTube, it looks weird. Like it probably has that sort of sense of otherness and shock that maybe punks in the street had once.
They hang out together in Camden together, the punks and the Harajuku girls kind of all hang out together.
Maybe that goes back to why there's no theatre and fashion, street style.
They all mash up on sort of
abused it a bit, I guess. I think people
the theatre's moved outside the show.
Yeah, I think people my age want it instantly, and couture and theatrical things like what McQueen did, even though it's so beautiful, and I still strive for that. I think a lot of people my age want it now, and when you've got a white background at a fashion show and a girl walking down with nude heels and they're wearing the dress and it's just got a zip at the back, they're like, brilliant, I can wear that. You know, people want not to think too much, I think.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think that's the difficulty with the internet. It's made fashion more complex, but it's also dumbed it down.
Yeah, and I was talking to these designers, Fidel Golan, about the way in which I said, does Instagram help you? And he said, well, we do really detailed sort of couture pieces, and so someone will take a photo of it and it looks really bad. But then when someone takes a picture, and I went to a show the other day, I won't say the name of it, but the dresses were awful. But on Instagram, God, they look absolutely amazing because of a filter. So it helps people who aren't so high-end, but who are high-end.
Well, I think that's the whole statement sweater thing, isn't it? Like no one can... Oh, we're starting. I'll stop talking. Can we have music? Oh, they're not streaming the actual soundtrack. Could someone find out what the music is at the show if someone's got access to... Would you, Sarah or Laura, would you mind?
Looks a bit witchy again straight away, isn't it?
I like the way she's walking. She looks so angry.
I wonder if this is streetcast again.
I think it's always a mix, no? Streetcast and I think they have the best casting in London anyway.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know Ben and Ed well?
No. Not at all, to be honest.
Is it Pippi Longstocking that had that red curly hair that they're referencing?
Yeah, and a few freckles drawn on or something. Look at the way they're walking. Do you not think that's quite weird? It's like bow-legged.
I think it's probably because
that's the shoes. It's the shoes. Yeah, I like that.
I know. What's our look? We've said like bow people and Pippi Longstocking. We've kind of thrown that out there, but I look at this and I think it's more grown up because if you look at those pieces, well, it seems pretty commercial. Like that skirt, the jacket.
You can wear that to the office. Can't you?
Yeah. What are our first thoughts, Dean? You're being quiet. I like putting people on the spot when they're talking.
No, I mean, it's hard to... I guess there's obviously kind of been a bit of a change. Like it's a bit like last season in a way. Like it's more monochromatic and it's changed from that like mad building a huge set and doing, you know, it's like something just happened. Some stuff fell off.
I think.
Oh, what happened?
I think that was a bit of drama.
Do you think that was intentional?
I think no.
So she dropped her sleeves.
Sleeves came off.
Her sleeve. Well, that's good. Yeah.
She has to fall over next.
Yeah, kicking the clothes along the catwalk.
But this is what confuses me because so they say they're feminists, and maybe this sounds very simplistic, but to see like baby doll dresses, to me that's the antithesis of feminism.
I don't think they're feminists, and I think it's more about female empowerment, and I think that's completely different than feminism.
It's quite aggressive, even this, you know, with a baby doll dress, there's something quite aggressive about it. Maybe it's the hair.
Yeah, this thing
you
here.
know.
So what were you going to say?
Just that girl looked amazing. She's gone now, but because I don't know, it was very...
That's so wistful.
Obviously,
she's gone now.
It's very, well, you know, it's very, it's kind of like retro and nostalgic in a way, but when she had like these kind of angular sci-fi sunglasses.
And gold gloves and gold, like sort of sci-fi tints to the kind of little Bo Peep and...
So we're saying it's confrontational? Because it's soft, but there's something aggressive about it, I think.
It's just a kind of eclectic mix, isn't it?
They look
really,
so possessed.
Then.
They look like Victorian possessed dolls or something like that, I don't know.
It's a bit dishevelled.
Like in mourning.
Isn't it? It's always dishevelled. But it's nice when the clothes look a bit cleaner and you can imagine what it looks like in a shop, but still have the, you know, twisted femininity to it.
I think that's the thing with them, is I think there has to be a bit more of a sort of commercial bent to it, and I think that's what the strength of last season is. It didn't feel too much like it had lost any of their drama or their creativity or their sort of theatrical tendencies, but then you see the clothes online for sale and they look great. They look like beautiful little dresses.
Incredible.
Yeah, it shows they're brilliant designers. They don't actually need to have any teddy bear prints or cartoon. As cool as all that stuff looks, they can just strip it down to...
It's probably still there in the little details though, maybe. You know, that's the thing about them, that it's sometimes missed how we're looking at it like this, but something on the nail or a little pattern somewhere, a little marking somewhere is quite nice little details from them usually.
For some reason this reminds me of their menswear and how considered it is. It feels much more considered than previous seasons. I don't know if considered is the right word, but I find their menswear so incredible, as in new and just so interesting. And this really reminds me of it.
I really love their menswear as well. Last season, that kind of, you know, socks, Nike socks with the flip-flops and stuff like that, you know, you see people actually going around rocking that now. It's like really influential, and people really like that. That's kind of taking that kind of chavvy street thing and just making it a bit more wearable. I think it's worth us remembering as well that they started doing minimalism. When they started, it was all black, and everyone forgets that with Meadham. I think maybe because of that amazing Courtney collection. But I think, you know, we all said it's more black and white like last season. But in a way, I feel like
they've obviously found their feet a while ago, but sometimes it feels like they're kind of returning to thoughts that they've had previously. That they've had previously. It's all right. So maybe it's not so much of a surprise that it's becoming slightly more muted and slightly more simple.
Maybe going back to their roots again.
Yeah.
I do think it's. I think also roots is so difficult when you're a fashion designer, because I think they also really like, you know, to be like the bad boys, in a sense. You know, the Gaultier, the Galliano, and you know, there's always a surprise there. And it's always twisted, so I wouldn't be surprised if next season it would be rainbow again. So.
Yeah.
Going back to the menswear, actually, I think their women's wear is so much better than their menswear, like so much better, immeasurably so.
Why is that?
Hundreds of times better. This is just amazing, like, it's amazing. It's like a proper collection, and the menswear's great, but it's kind of more like styled pieces. And it just feels like it's like a whole incredible concept. Because it is like a bit sci-fi. Some of these things are so sci-fi, and it sort of feels more, it's almost like those Harajuku girls who dress up as kind of 19th century English, or like, it's like quite a twist on it rather than...
Proper dresser.
Yeah, the sort of Harajuku Lolitas, or you can imagine, you know, when they build these like fake Dutch villages in the Japanese countryside or that sort of thing, and then with the sort of space age sci-fi element of not really this, but like the sunglasses and the kind of patent big matrixy coat type stuff. It's really, really cool. It's been going on a long time as well. How many
yeah,
looks
it's a lot of
like?
I like it. It's more for our money.
Yeah.
This goes back to what we were saying about Tumblr though, and we were talking about with the Simone Rocha collection. I don't know if you guys saw it because it was earlier today, and she'd done a lot of like little socks with pearls around the top and a lot of little pearl collars. And it's got me thinking a lot today about fashion, about younger designers putting out fashion that can be copied, and not copied, but can be emulated by kids, like, or young people who love fashion. And that's kind of what I like about what Meadham do, is it feels like it's, that look could be reproduced by some, in a dress-up, like fashion.
Part of it's the styling details as well, though, isn't it? So the craftsmanship and the cut and the material and all that's coming from, you know, the two guys, or, you know, Simone or something, and then it's the stylist or whoever that decides to then put the sock on and turn it up, or
but you can
the
imagine
gold glove on
teenage girls
and add that
doing
bit, yeah. So sometimes the stylist is almost equally as important as adding their twists to the kind of craftsmanship and the touch of the designer, and how well those two work together, and it can sometimes make or break something as well, I think.
Harriet, you're being very quiet. What do you think?
I really love it. I never say that, but I actually really like it. Because the silhouettes are good, and I think that's really rare. I'm really bored of minimalism, big boxy shapes like Celine. I can't bear it, but this I love. And it's like little dolls. I don't know, I like the corsets. A really amazing sort of embellished corset just came on. But it's quite difficult with Meadham. I always look at the collection and I go, wow, God, that's intense. And you see it in separates. It's a completely different collection when you see it in separates. It's really interesting. I like it. They just look quite odd, these models. Are sort of like possessed exorcists or something like that. It's good.
Why have they thrown their sleeves on the catwalk?
Should we give them a little clap, because they look quite cute there. So we're giving it a thumbs up then. Maarten, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely thumbs up. Yeah, it's so nice to not just see cocktail dresses for West Londoners. I'm so fed up. So fed up with it. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can do something incredible and spectacular and still say something about, you know, where we live now, and that's what I felt with Marc Jacobs as well, and that's what I thought with Ryan Lowe and Simone, and, you know, it's strong personalities that have something to say about where we live now. And it's important to have a market awareness, but I find it much more interesting to also have a very strong personality. And I think that's why I miss Louise Gray so much in this schedule, because
for sure.
For me, she really had all of that combined, basically. And I don't know, I think Meadham Kirchhoff is great, perfect example for what I like.
It's really interesting to me that you picked out Marc Jacobs there as an example, because I feel like the collections that I know we've only just finished London, so I don't want to speak too soon before Milan and Paris, but it feels like the collections that are going to come to define this season, so something like that, Marc Jacobs, Simone Rocha's collection was absolutely stunning. It's been doing the antithesis of what you said you hate, which is good for you, which is these boxy minimal shapes. You know, Marc Jacobs, it was very Victorian, and it was, you know, quite opulent in this almost kind of trampy way and absolutely beautiful. And same with Simone, it was kind of, some of the models looked like cupcakes, and as they did there, in a beautiful way. And I wonder if what that says about the direction we're going in now.
Well, that's because of High Street. I think High Street, and there are so many streetwear brands that do the minimalism, sporty thing so well that Alexander Wang just looked like, I think, like a fool this season because we've seen it all. And I think as a designer, as a young independent designer, to compete with High Street, you need to offer something that basically cannot be copied. And I think that's very interesting.
Londoners want to look, it's not like New York. Really, the kids my age in New York, they want to look like their mother, they want to have the same bags as their mother, but in London we all want to look different from one another. So when you buy something from Topshop, you don't really want to see someone else in it.
For me, like, she had some nice details like that, like
really
the what was it, like a Tesco bag, but it said disco on it, and it just nice little details like Ishish and people like that always kind of bring out these cool little things that just feel very London, very street, very now, and make them stand out from the crowd. You don't get that in Paris or Milan, you can never get that anywhere else.
And affordable, so obtainable to mass people, aren't they?
When we say very London, this gets me thinking, because people throw around very London as a way of kind of saying very creative. And it got me thinking a bit this season, because when we did our Christopher Kane discussion, we talked a lot obviously about the investment that he's had from Kering, we talked about him opening his Mount Street store. And at some point someone said, we were kind of working on the presumption that that's what every designer is hoping for, is kind of to become a mega brand. Do you think that actually someone like Meadham Kirchhoff, do we see that in their future, them having huge investment, selling a perfume, having standalone stores, or do we want to kind of savour those little...
What, you think they're just going to sell on ASOS or something?
Well, no, just become a little London kind of, because people see it as a criticism that there's people who work in London that aren't mega brands, that maybe never make a huge amount of money, they make a living, but they don't... Is that a bad thing that we don't... That
no, I think you can keep your
striving?
integrity and still have a shop. But at the end of the day, there's a reason they're doing this, and it's the, bread and butter, isn't it? At the end of the day, you want to pay your rent. And if someone offers them a shop, as long as it's within their, criteria and they can keep their aesthetic and whatnot, then I don't think they would say no. I don't think anyone would say no, not in like current climate.
Totally.
But does it worry you with London that we have... I guess this is actually quite a good question for you, Maarten, working as a designer, because people act like it's amazing that we have so much creativity, but I think sometimes that overshadows how difficult it actually is to be a designer and how hard it is to kind of continue to put out a collection. And I guess it must be frustrating sometimes for people to see London as a city that's all about creativity and not about anything commercial, because I guess in a way that stops designers from being considered as commercially viable, because they're just seen as like London cool kids.
Oh, so are you saying that London designers aren't being taken seriously?
Yeah, I wonder if you find the kind of constant view that London's really creative and it's this kind of place to go and see stuff but maybe not go and buy stuff. Did you find that frustrating as a designer?
No, it's a very good selling point actually.
Yeah.
It's a very good way to introduce your brand internationally, I think. But
that's really interesting.
I also think there's not so much money in London.
Yeah.
Like High Street is incredible in London, but if you're talking about like proper business in fashion, you have to go to New York or you have to go to Paris, because there's not a lot of money here. And it's not everyone's ambition to get an investor. And I think it took Christopher Kane several years before he found something that he felt comfortable with. Because I'm sure he was offered this or something like that for a while. So it's not everyone's ambition to get an investor. Like some people just want to make their own personal statements, make a living doing so, and work for other companies as well, obviously. But people look to London for inspiration, and they fly people all over so they can inspire entire teams. Like that's how it works. I think it's great. I
think it's a really good point you say, because that's what the Christopher Kane discussion got me wondering about. It's a good point that not everyone wants to have a mega brand. No, absolutely. Like it's off. Well, my personal opinion is like it's not that nice, because you have to do it until you're 60, 70 years old and you're stuck. And like, come on, you're selling your name. It's not easy. It's definitely not everyone's ambition. No. But do we worry this when we look at London and we look at someone like Ryan Lowe, who you said is amazing, when we look at Meadham? I think it's very easy to think back and think, well, we're a body map now. Do we worry about people dropping off the schedule? Or do you think we should just embrace with London that, maybe some of the names that we love this season, as you said with Louise Gray, they're not going to be on schedule next season because it's impossible for designers to keep showing? Is that a good? Should we just embrace that?
It's evolution, isn't it? And if she wanted to carry on showing, I guess she'd go off schedule, and then her following would follow her and go and see it. But it's a shame when you lose people like that, and you wonder why.
Yeah, it worries me. So I was trying to think, like, you know, some of the names that Topshop have been sponsoring these young people for a while, and who was there before that, and what happened to them, and where did they drop off, and it's just like.
I think more people should drop off. I think we should have a big call.
I really agree.
I think we should have a really kind of brutal, hardcore call.
But I think we
already...
Everyone will be happier for it.
Who would you cull?
I would keep...
That's diplomatic. That's a politician's answer.
No, but you know, I think there's space for a lot in London, and there's kind of, you know, that J.W. Anderson is so different to what we just watched, and that collection is amazing, and that collection is going to be influencing fashion designers and fashion and people wearing clothes all around the world. Christopher Kane is amazing, and he deserves his success, and good for him for being ambitious, and like, why not start mega brands? I think all of these people should be going for, like, let's start mega brands and be amazing. And there were a few looks in the middle of his collection this season, just those like rainbow kind of, what the hell is that even made of? Like, what is that? It's absolutely incredible. And and then like, oh yeah, Ryan Lowe's. I think Ryan does all right, you know. Ryan's selling out t-shirts, he's getting his stuff everywhere, like people want to buy his stuff, wear his stuff. If you see the collection this season, is kind of, there's like big commercial pieces, beautiful coats and things. There's no reason why he would ever have to drop off or not become a mega brand. And Meadham Kirchhoff, it's very hard to know if they'd want to be, like, very hard to tell if they actually have those aspirations, but they definitely could if that's what they wanted to do.
I agree with what you say, but I worry in some ways, you know, it's a little simplistic for us to think, you know, everyone does okay, because like someone like Louise Gray, you could be like, everyone wants to wear Louise Gray, it's amazing, she's selling so well, she's done this amazing thing with Topshop, but she's not able to show this season, you know. And Louise is an incredibly talented woman, she's absolutely going to stay in fashion producing amazing things, but you know, amazing talented designers struggle financially.
Like you say, like mega brand to an extent, you know, Meadham Kirchhoff have already done that jumper range with Amazon. They've already released a perfume, haven't they? Didn't they do a scent and something like that?
Yeah,
they've already done quite a lot of these things, but it's just not been huge big numbers. It's been like kind of quite cool, small, little limited edition things, and maybe that's nice enough that they've branched out in that many different ways already. But yeah, I think it's sad when people like Louise.
And sometimes it worries me that people,
money, because you know, we're in a, you know, we're not technically in the recession anymore, but we have been, and I think everybody's been hit really badly by that. I think it totally affects things.
Do you think that people outside of fashion are aware? Because I think kids who post this stuff on Tumblr, people that watch the live streams, do you think they're aware of how difficult it is to be a fashion designer? I think people think of fashion as glamour. I think they don't think of... Did you find that quite frustrating, I guess, when people were like, you're like, I'm a fashion designer, people are like, oh, glamour, champagne.
I'm always embarrassed to say it. I remember someone asked, oh, what do you do? I was like, I'm a fashion designer. Because they think they have this weird image of being a fashion designer. Like it's silly. And I think fashion is so incredibly popular at the moment, and you know, hopefully at some point it will kind of calm down a bit.
Would you like to see it calm down? Do you think we've got too much hype?
I don't know. I don't want it to be elitist, obviously, because I don't really see the point in that. But I do feel like you have so many opinions.
It's become so democratic. Again, going back to the shows and things like that, and you know, certain people going, and now when you turn up at Somerset House, it's like a sea of people, everybody doing their own thing, and you're kind of like, who's that? They're like...
So you mean democratic, not just in the...
Just everybody creating their own little bubbles and their own little worlds, and you know, that's also what's cool about it, but it's totally changed in the last 5 years.
It's flooded, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's flooded,
I don't know if it can't keep growing at this pace. It's got to like drop off from something.
It's like what you said earlier about mystery. It's going to go back to that, I think. It's all about the celebrity, isn't it? The rise of celebrity and the designer becoming a celebrity.
And the celebrity blogger,
and the
celebrity
face off. And I think, who's the editor of French Vogue?
Emmanuel.
Well, she had that documentary, didn't she? And she just said when she first started in fashion, that people didn't care who the editor was. They weren't a celebrity, and now Anna Winters, you know, she turns up at a show, she's the most pat person there.
Yeah.
It's really changed, fashion has, with the internet.
Do you think people get into fashion now because they want to be famous?
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, I think so as well.
15 minutes. And, you know, you can watch someone's story. You can watch how McQueen had a dad who's a cab driver and then, you know, became, you know, the McQueen. So people suddenly think it's really obtainable to be able to do that because you've heard someone else's story.
But do you think that's an internet generation thing as well? People think if they put themselves on Tumblr, if they put themselves on MySpace, if they're a musician, that they'll get picked up.
Justin Bieber did that, you know, everyone did it.
First time we've had a Justin Bieber reference on a panel. Let's just check that moment. That's good try.
A bit of Bieber.
I do think Tumblr is quite punk in a sense that it's uneducated, or it doesn't have to be educated, and people can have an opinion and a voice without having to study for 15 years. I think everyone knows that if you want to be a fashion designer at London Fashion Week, you have to do, you know, you have to study, you have to work for it as well. And also, obviously not everyone is from the same school, but I think people wanting to do fashion because they want to be famous, that sounds incredibly silly, because I just think about Louise Wilson. I was like, well, I don't think people would survive her.
But I think if they don't become fashion designers, because you're right, it's too difficult, because Louise Wilson would whittle them out. But they become bloggers, or
they try and get
they find their outlet, they find their way.
I don't think bloggers are filled fashion designers.
No, but I think people, the kind of people who want to get in fashion, they become. I don't know. Have you noticed that somewhere like ID, do you get like people applying for internships, people applying for jobs, where you think that they're just attracted to the glamour of it rather than the graft that goes with. I say this as I sit here drinking some champagne.
I probably am one of those people. So.
Why do you say? So do you want to be famous? Is that why you got into fashion?
Yeah, but I'm attracted to the glamour. You know, sex and parties, that sort of thing. That's good, isn't it? That's okay. I mean, there's many reasons to be like involved in fashion. I don't know.
Do you think it's different for sort of your generation, our generation, than it is for maybe when Susie Menkes and Tim Blanks got into fashion?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess it must be. It must be really different. I'm sure there's lots of people, journalists working in fashion, who don't want to actually become Susie Menkes or Tim Blanks. Like, there's many different motivations for doing what you do.
What's your motivation?
That's a good one.
Just want to have fun, you know. Just see cool things. I think a good fashion show, like presumably what we just watched, or like going right back that thing of theatre, just anything can be really good. Like going to a really good fashion show, or a really good football match, or something like that, or just, you know, a really good art performance. Just seeing something live and brilliant, and seeing kind of people so talented at what they do, creating that moment, and being able to sit there or stand there or dance there and kind of hear that music, see that spectacle, see these like, what is it? It's supposed to be like the kind of best looking people in the world, wearing the best clothes, designed by the best designers,
well, no,
with the best music, and yeah, I suppose.
Sorry, I'm picking on you. Let's move on. So, as this is our last London Fashion Week panel, I'd like to talk a little bit about what this says about where fashion's at, what this says about where London's at. What are going to be our takeaways from the season? No one wants to answer now in case I attack them.
Great question.
But there were so many good shows today that I haven't seen yet. Like, I haven't seen Fashion East yet. I haven't seen Thomas Tate yet.
Thomas Tate was amazing.
Yeah, I think Thomas Tate and Marcus Almeida and Simone Rocha are new generation. And I think it's incredibly considered, incredibly aware of their market, and still much more interesting than New York, which I think is great. And no boring cocktail dresses, but it sells really well. I think that's very exciting.
I asked this on the Simone Rocha panel. I was like, does any woman want to wear a nice cocktail dress anymore? I just don't know why we're seeing so much of that on the London runways. Just constant cocktail dresses, and then you get someone like Simone. I think that's part of the reason it feels so refreshing.
Yeah, because at the same time she is doing cocktail dresses, but she's getting away with it because she's, you know, she's Irish and she's kind of naughty and she likes a can, and it's like she gets away with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think our opinions are the majority of the consumer market, maybe even the minority.
I guess if you're going to buy something in fashion and you save up a lot of money, maybe a dress is something.
Yeah, exactly. get a nice LBD, you know,
Also
it lasts your lifetime.
Simone's kind of from this kind of history of, you know, her father and mother, they're all, you know, they're all there helping out, it's all a family business. She's got a great massive step up there straight away. She deserves it, she works very hard, and, you know, but it's certainly easy for people like that than other people.
But we've enjoyed this London Fashion Week. We've been inspired, we've been moved, we've been impressed.
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah,
There
let's
is
go
good.
London.
There has been this kind of Christopher Kane, Meadham Kirchhoff, J.W. Anderson, fashionista sort of, that's been going on a while. So there's definitely space for like something new, or like something, you know, that axis of like loving it. Maybe in New York too, you know, the kind of like Rodarte, Alex Wang, Marc Jacobs. I'm sure the time would be right for someone to just like seize. Maybe it'll happen in Milan or Paris, who knows, like
Probably Milan.
something to like really surprise everyone and kind of shock everyone. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Also, there's loads of money flying about at the moment for like
Is there?
supposedly club
Yeah, where
clients.
is
Yeah, there
that?
is.
Yeah.
And I think you can feel it like
Some.
if you went to that DKNY party a couple months back, just like that, it was like fashion parties are back. Like there was a level.
They've always done that.
No, but this was really. I don't know. I thought it was a while since like that.
Blondie performing live with every, you know, what's his name, Kent, famous politicians' daughters were there. Donna Karen, they've always done that big mega party. That's always
I
been
think that's
there.
so sad. You know, everyone cares about the party at the end of the day. I think you have to sort of, I don't know, do something in the day
Oh, I
that
just
is
said-
worth justifying the party at night, you know, that really ever expensive party.
I think the brands
should be
that do the
put-
big parties are because they haven't done something in the day to
Yeah.
Overcompensate.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll give us a nice canapé instead.
But I think it is a reflection that there is a lot of, I don't know, it feels like money's coming, you know. There's a lot of money in fashion at the moment. Well, no, it's
Hopefully.
kind of ramping up a bit. You could see it like the parties over London Fashion Week were like big, you know, like that was a big fucking
I think it's just a
expensive
shame
party.
because I think in a way that seems so crass when you're in a city like London where there's designers like toiling away in their studios, tiny little studios trying to make a collection on bare minimum, and then there's this massive party happening. I just find it really tasteless, and I just find it frustrating. I guess when you've done a studio visit and you see someone making an amazing collection, they can barely afford to be doing it, and they're worried about whether they can show next season. Then you go to some huge party, and you're like,
It's such a big difference.
yeah.
It's so funny. It's such a different world that what you actually live in.
But I think
Big
people
parties.
think that's what fashion is. I don't
Yeah,
think they.
well, yeah, fine, but maybe for them it is.
But art mimics society, doesn't it? So I think the divide
It will always be
between
like
the rich and the
Good
poor
line,
probably
yeah.
gets wider, so does
I like that.
same with fashion. So
I like this. It's kind of been quite a good like London. It's tough for designers panel, which is good.
conversation.
It's true though.
But to summarise, we're impressed by Meadham. We're happy with what we've seen. As that
Yeah.
puts in
Yeah,
a good
love it.
Yeah.
relieved. Relieved.
relieved. I'm happy it's a nice one to end London Fashion Week because I
Yeah.
think, yeah, that was a beautiful collection. So, and a beautiful panel. So thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.